Hi, welcome everybody to LASBA's podcast. Thank you for joining us today. If you can, give us a like and also give us a subscription, because when you do that, then you get all our podcasts coming to you. We've been doing a lot of podcasts throughout the year, and we intend to do a lot more. So today I'm sitting here with two superstars in ministry. One is Pastor Charlie Corum, and the other is Dave Newman. And so we did our podcast with Charlie a couple months back, but just as a refresher, Charlie, give a little background into your expertise and what you've been doing, and because you're going to be talking about community ministry.
Yes. Well, I became a Christian in 1975, as I shared in the other broadcast there, and immediately got involved in the community of the church, East LA, and really saw that there was a need there that we weren't touching. We weren't out in the neighborhood. So got in touch with the different street gangs and stuff, but started teaching there and with the youth ministry, and just got out in the community. And then I went back to my community where I grew up, which was in South El Monte, and started a neighborhood Bible study right away. So I just felt a compassion from the beginning to be outside in the street somewhere talking about Jesus, not just learning. A wonderful church I was in, learning so well about the Lord, getting a good foundation. And so eventually I ended up coming to the Los Angeles Southern Baptist Association. The church that I was in was the Church on Brady in East LA and part of the LA Southern Baptist Association. And eventually finished that role there and worked at the association here and did community ministry, because at that time I had pastored a church in Rosemead after I left the Church on Brady, and that was for about 17 years. Okay. And it was a very much community church. We worked with all the schools, we worked with the city government and different service agencies and things. And so when I finished that to go into prison ministry, a lot of things transitioning there, the Los Angeles Southern Baptist Association office director asked if I would come in and maybe work with churches and helping them to get outside the walls and build bridges in their community, to work with the neighbors or community of that of their local churches. Mm-hmm. And so eventually then went on to work with the North American Mission Board and doing that for Southern California here.
How long were you with them?
7 years.
7 years.
7 years, yes. And so I was with LASBA for 7 years, and then 7 years with NAM. So 14 years altogether with the conventions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's easy to say your heart is for community.
That's my heart, yeah. With NAM, I was a field community ministry field consultant is what the title was that NAM appointed me to do out here in California. And so, yes.
Okay. David, give us a little on your background.
So my name is Dave, or David, or Rev, whatever it is that you
Super
want.
Dave.
Whatever. Oh gosh, you want to put that in there? Whatever you want to call me, just don't call me late dinner. We're good. But I have actually been pastoring for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. I got called to preach when I was 18. Started going to California Baptist. Eventually made my way over to Talbot Theological Seminary. That's how I heard about LASBA. Mm-hmm. That's how I heard about Biola. That's how I heard about so many different places, even more within this community. After I graduated from Talbot, and even before my time over at CBU, I worked with the Salvation Army Compton Corps. I did that for years, working with neighborhood. My mom drove me around, and she asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I wanted to work with people, and I wanted to work with the neighborhood. And I told her this around 1920. So she ended up, one, helping me get a job with Parks and Recs. And then two, later on, she helped me get a job working with the Salvation Army. And that's where I learned the grassroots of nonprofits. And I'll never forget my first job it was this sheet of thousands of people. It was on paper where they had all the names of all the different houses in the neighborhood community organizations, and we just did dry calls.
Yeah.
And that was the first, once I made it from learning how to take out the trash and scrub the floors and all those things, they could trust me at some point to go do dry calls. And I'll never forget doing those calls and then telling folks about the SAL and getting to know people from there. Absolutely fell in love with nonprofit work, because I started to see that with all the different kids and all the different students, the different peeps within Compton, it was just life. And I didn't know that you could hand out, bus passes or hotel rooms, and that there were places like that, because my family and we struggled a lot growing up. And so from there, and while that was happening, I was pastoring a church in Compton, Truth Outreach Missionary Baptist Church. Started pastoring there around 2006. That's another story for another podcast. I started preaching at 18, but in 2006, started pastoring. I didn't want to at the time fully. I was kind of thrown into it, but I'm glad we survived. After CBU and working with the peeps in Riverside, going to different homeless drives, doing all those different things, started going to Talbot. And while at Talbot, still pastoring the church, still doing stuff here in the neighborhood, just being involved and working with different nonprofits. I graduated and I started working over at the Los Angeles Union Rescue Mission, where I was a chaplain for years. And while I was a chaplain for years, I did that as well as pastored the church in Compton. So I got the chaplain experience and the pastor experience at the same time.
Wow.
And it was a lot. And somewhere in there, even before then, while I was over at CBU, just to jump back a little bit, God really called me to work with the neighborhood and to work with people from everywhere. And I ran into that passage, Revelation 7:9, where it talks about every tribe, nation, tongue, king gathered around the throne. And I was like, oh, our church, which was a predominantly African-American church, and I love the African-American church. This is my conviction. This doesn't have to be anybody else's conviction, by the way. I keep that very true constantly. And I said, man, that passage rocked me so much that I said, oh, our particular church, I said, we need to have a church that looks like heaven. And from that particular point, I really wanted to do like a multi-ethnic, multicultural type situation. So while I was over at Talbot, many of my projects were about starting a church and planting a church. But when I graduated, I started working as a chaplain. I love chaplaincy work with the homeless. I was introduced, especially at the Union Rescue Mission. We worked with peeps that struggle with addictions. It was about life transformation. It was about so many different things. And we worked with so many different nonprofits and so many different organizations. It was absolutely amazing. But while I was there, I started to feel like I was an alien. And I realized that God wanted me to plant a church in my neighborhood of La Mirada, because I also started, so once I moved to Talbot, once we moved to La Mirada, I never left. My wife and I never left. We got married in 2013. And once we came here, we did not leave La Mirada. And so actually La Mirada is the longest place I've ever lived my entire life. So I've moved around a bunch. And so I'd go to the grocery store, and we go to Stater Brothers in La Mirada and talk with the butcher, and I would tell my wife, honey, he would be a great person to invite to Neighborhood Life Church. And my wife would say, well, nobody from La Mirada is going to Compton, okay? And that tension lived within inside of me for about a year while working as a chaplain, driving back and forth to the URM. And I remember I called my wife and I told her, I said, honey, I said, I think that God is calling me to start a church here in our neighborhood. And she told me immediately, she said, I think that you need to call God back and tell him, because the point was I needed to quit my job. She said, I think you need to call God back and you tell them you got the wrong memo. Like that's the wrong message. And so I called her. I said, well, okay. She said, you pray about it, think about it some more, pray about it. And she was like, but no. I prayed about it. I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake it. And I started asking God for a sign if that's what he really wanted me to do. And just when you ask God for a sign, he makes rocks cry out, and he does whatever he can to get your attention, and you know what I'm talking about. So then it started with a joke with my friends. And I say, hey, I want to start a church called The Church. And they would take me seriously. They say, that was a great idea. And so months before, my friend said, you need to get connected with the North American Mission Board. And I said, no, man. I said, we're just going to go. I'm going to get connected with them. No, you need to get connected with LASBA. You need to get connected with SBC again. And our family needs to get back in those relationships, because I come from a family of pastors. And literally, God gave me a sign. A pastor sat me down, and he says, Dave, do you want to be a pastor, or do you want to be a chaplain? He says, I want to support you either direction, but you can't do both. And I told him, I said, well, he said, do you know who God has called you to be? I said, I believe that God has called me to be a pastor in my neighborhood. And he didn't know that I was praying. And then all of a sudden, my team that I was working with, they said, where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? And I said, how did they know to ask this question? Because I hadn't told anybody really that that's what I was thinking. And I remember I was sitting in my boss's office, Chaplain Albert K., who's now the vice president over at the Union Rescue Mission, as well as he is the outreach pastor for Living Hope in Brea. And I remember telling him, I said, I think that's it. I said, God has called me. I told him, I said, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I said, God has called me, and he had helped me kind of process some things out. And here we go. We didn't stop. 4 months into planting. 4 months into planting, the pandemic hits. And talk about having to trust in God. And it was not easy. And within that particular time, that's where I met you, Pastor Steve. That was where we also got connected with the North American Mission Board. That was where we went through a lot of different testing. And our church has been involved with the neighborhood ever since. So Neighborhood Life Church, about life in the neighborhood.
Okay, so you're talking life in the neighborhood, you're talking community ministry, you're kind of talking about the same things, but there's some distinctions between the two things. So if you just tuned in and you want to know what we're talking about community ministry, we're talking about neighboring, we're going to be defining what that is. We're talking about going outside the four walls of the church and doing ministry, actually being the church. So we'll be talking about that. But before we jump into, Charlie, what I want you to talk about, you guys have a little shared history.
Yes. Yeah, when I heard about Dave Newman right away, I said, that's a very familiar name. So in the years I worked with correctional ministry with the California Youth Authority, Dave Newman, Dave's father, was running the boot program at Fred C. Nellis in Woodward.
Brothers Out of Trouble.
Brothers Out of Trouble, right. Incredible program, helping the kids to have a military type training program. And a lot of the guys just changed, their lives changed. Well, I became the parole chaplain there because I was a pastor working as a volunteer with our church in the facility there. The chaplain there asked me if I could teach some classes and take over some things there. And especially gave me the responsibility to follow up parolees. So I did that, and a lot of the young men that your dear dad discipled and trained there in that program, the boot program, I would work with them when they got out, helping them to find resources when they went home in their local communities. And so, yes, when we met before this broadcast, I knew Dave Newman. Your dad.
And I was telling him when he shared that with me, I said, I remember my parents actually being in the car and having the conversation about what to call the program. And I remember they went through all these different acronyms, and eventually they landed on BOOT. And I remember they had T-shirts that had boots on the back of them, and they went through that whole thing.
Yes.
And they started the boot program. And I mean, I just remember it just happened. Just my mom was like, "Oh, what about this?" No. My dad, "What about this?" No. And then eventually they were like, "How about boot? Brothers out of trouble." That's literally, Charlie, how it happened. Like that, it was right there. My dad and mom having a conversation in the car on one of our mini drives from Los Angeles to the Inland Empire, or picking my dad. They discussed it for a while. And so it's really cool to come back to this particular neighborhood. The truth is, I think I was trying to run from this area because, I didn't want to be working in Whittier, close to Whittier, or in that area like my dad. I wanted to have my own thing, right? But it's so funny that coming here and working with the neighborhood of La Mirada, my first meeting was in Whittier, and they said, "What was your last name?" I said, "Oh man." Or in our assessment, when we were at the North American Mission Board, and our assessment, one of the guy goes, "So, wait a minute, did you say your name was David Newman?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Did your grandfather pastor in Compton, your grandfather's?" I said, "Yes." "I held you when you were a baby," right? And I go, "Oh man." And I think it's interesting that no matter how much I've tried to run, right, it's like I'm running towards the same direction and running towards all the people. So I'm done running, right? And it's more or less at this time accepting. And so I totally understand. Like, I thought it was really cool, and I wasn't surprised because the truth is, not only are you referenced with my dad, you're also referenced with Robert Sowell. When I met with him, he was like, "Oh, tell Charlie I said hello."
Wow.
You're also referenced with Dan Pryor. I'm not even sure if you remember him. Whenever I go somewhere, peeps have been like, "Hey, have you connected with Charlie?" And so I find it really, really cool that finally I know that one of the things I really wanted to do was spend time with you, and I've really enjoyed our conversations together.
Yeah, and I find that really interesting. It's okay to be a branch off the tree,
That part right there.
so-
Amen.
Yeah,
How else are we
amen.
supposed to abide?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, with the boot program, I know we want to talk about community ministry,
Yeah.
but that was community ministry. I was
That's
a
right.
pastor in the city of Rosemead at that time. And so we had a youth center that grew into an opportunity for me to work with the Garvey School District with an after-school program. The school came over because we were so active as a church with our neighborhood teen center. The principal came over and said, "Hey, all the kids are coming over here and hanging out with your pool tables." And those were the upright standing video games. They weren't even
What's an
portable.
upright standing
What are
video
they-
game?
We'll talk about it later.
Those big machines.
Oh.
This is way back. This is
Coin,
in the.
a coin, David. They put a coin
What's
in
you
a
had to put-
coin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to put quarters in it. Yeah. So we had three of those in our parsonage. We turned into a youth center. So that turned into a real outreach program, and a lot of kids got saved and came to the church. But then they asked me to come to the school, and the principal came over and said, "So many kids come over here to your youth program. Would you consider doing an after-school program with us?" And so I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So I remember he said, "Come on over Monday, and I'll have the kids in the auditorium, and I'll introduce you to them." And so he did. I went over Monday, and he had 90 kids.
Surprise.
Surprise, really.
That's the way it works.
Shock, yeah.
That's nonprofit 101, right? They don't give you the resources to do it either.
No,
it's just
no.
figure it out.
Immediately.
And they're all looking back at
Right,
you, the
yeah.
kids are, and you're going, "Oh God, what do I do here?"
Yeah. 90 kids looking at me and
And
saying,
neighborhood
"What are you
kids
gonna
are a
do?"
vibe.
Right.
All right.
Well, these were identified as at risk. They were high risk,
I
at
call them
risk.
neighborhood kids.
Too many F's, too
Yeah.
many U's. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's how I was able to eventually take these groups to the boot program. I know we're talking about that wonderful program. It was like a Scared Straight program at the CYA facility where Mr. Newman worked, his father. And it was an incredible program. So we took school groups in, and I took from other districts because it was such a powerful program.
It is.
But then when
was.
those youth that were locked up got out, we created a program with the local schools where they could be speakers. And so these guys had been tried as youth, but given long sentences. So they got juvenile life sentences, which was to age 25. So again, your program, your dad's program, was the program that was helping kids to really make decisions to change their lives.
I think that's a good segue or a good way to connect it to community, because like the truth is, over time, throughout work that I've had the opportunity to do, and even with working on Skid Row, et cetera, like the question that I find myself always asking is, once they're done with the program, right, where do they go, right?
Yes.
And so community ministry, and that's even within the context of heaven. Now that, you know, in context of the kingdom, now that you've become a believer, right? Now that you've become saved, what's next? Right? And I think that actually would be a great way to summarize the heart of, you know, evangelism, is what's next. Jesus came, Jesus died, Jesus rose. The disciples answer the question, Jesus is like, now what? And they're like, oh, all right, we're supposed to be the light of the world. We're supposed to be a city on the hill. And how we engage with the city, because the city is the mission field, right? And so I think we're constantly, as community workers, community organizers, community planners, community whatever, right? I think we're constantly trying to answer the question of what's next. And not only what's next for the sake of what's next according to the mission of God, which is us partnering with God as he seeks out to move his people, in a sense, to his agenda, right? And so like constantly we're asking, what's next, and what is God, well, number one, what is God doing? What is he already doing? And how does that fit into the big picture of what he's trying to accomplish?
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to share one other thing with the program that your dad was doing. We would have the kids parole and then speak at the campuses.
That was awesome, by the way.
And the kids had a lot of speakers in the different programs that they, hardly would pay attention to. They were glued to these young speakers that were coming from the youth authority. And so because of that, many of the kids in the school became believers, because these were all Christian kids that were in the program that we were meeting and then taking to schools. And the principal and others said, your speakers are the most effective. The kids just want them to come back. So we had quite a few speakers coming.
But I think it's program. Also the follow-up, right? So it's one thing for the students to come and speak to the class. I think the reason why we exist, right? I love the boot program. It's a great place to be like, you scare them straight, you do all the different things, right? But community engagement, cultural engagement is about answering that question of, all right, now that you've been scared straight, right? Now that you have that, it's one thing for students to be scared straight, and it's the same thing that Martin Luther King oftentimes would argue. They'd say, you got to have your boots, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And Dr. King says, well, they ain't got no boots, Wow. It's the same thing that we do. We proclamate over the pulpit oftentimes, and we're sharing the gospel, we're sharing the truth, hearts are convicted, right? But then it's like what you and I've talked about. It's one thing for us to preach it, right? But the people need to, especially in marginalized communities and with neighbors, there needs to be some type of tangible way for them to be able to feel connected. Some tangible way for them to understand it. Some tangible, because even Jesus did that, right? Jesus didn't just go on the Sermon on the Mount and preach the sermon. No, Jesus lived the sermon. When he said, blessed are the poor in spirit, he's not only talking about those, as one commentary talks about how it's spiritual bankruptcy. No, he's saying it's for those people who are so broken, who are so low, who are so impoverished, for the poor, for the prostitute, for those people who realize that they are lacking something. Well, that thing that we're lacking is Jesus Christ. And all of us are in the need of that. All of us are in need and lacking. All of us are found wanting. But I believe also, as we have answered that question, and that's what Billy Graham talks about, how Jesus is the cure, right? Well, Jesus is the cure, but why do we even exist if that was, how do we point that? So,
Yes.
that's the same thing. So it's one thing and I say that all to say, yeah, it's great. I loved the fact that my dad's program, right, was going up there and, the guys would speak all around. But I think the next one is what's next? What's the follow-up steps? Because here's the truth. While working on Skid Row, I met many of the guys that were in those programs. After they finished with their moment of, the incarceration, they go out, they go, speak and do all those different things. We don't, as a society, do a good job with transitioning peeps from the institutions back into normal life. And you've seen this, right? When I was working over at the Illumination Foundation and over even, like I said, downtown, I'd watch the guys literally get out of the institution. And for that first year, they would just be laying in bed. They would have no sense of purpose. Or if they were laying in bed, you give them 5 years, but they're still institutionalized. They've been in prison for about 25 years of their life. And they're saying, all right, go out. You have a year, go make it, go get a job. But wait, they go out and they can't go get a job because no one wants to hire a felon unless they're in the special program where you go make keys kind of deal, right? And so it's one thing. I think that program was key to helping people at that particular time have a broader understanding, to scare kids. But I don't necessarily know if that tactic works anymore with this particular generation. They see it as something completely different. You trying to why are you trying to scare me, right? Wait a minute, I don't care about that. I don't want to hear about that. Would that even work today? Because how many times are we telling them the truth?
Yeah, I think the important thing is follow-up when they get out.
Yes.
That's what and so the church comes in, and then what happened here with this, what we're referring to with the boot program was incredible in the institution, and then the kids were coming out and speaking and being incredible in influencing students on the campus, but it was all connected to a church.
That's right.
And so our church, well, that motivated a young man in our church. I remember Carlos became not just a youth leader, he became a youth pastor because the group grew so much, but he was doing discipleship. He was really, so the other end, one end of the bridge is going into the community. The other end is once they come to the church, we need to be ready to receive them.
And so we call that outreach and inreach.
Right. And that's important.
Reaching out, reaching in.
So many of the young men and women that came out to the community, we had discipleship for them. And then we were also following up in other communities and contacting other churches to say, do you have somebody in your church that would be willing to receive kids coming out and speaking at your schools? So we were even involving other churches, and that worked in the association here, because I was part of the LA Association already. So we were able to influence other churches too to be interested in kids on the margin that were locked up, coming out, and helping them. And those kids got discipled. I was in San Diego last year with 3 of them that are all businessmen. These guys were in for very serious crimes in the state prison system, but now they're in churches in San Diego, and they have their own, 2 of them have plumbing business, and one has a masonry business. And so they would have never been there, but it was churches on the outside that they came home to that we made sure they got connected to, that received them, so discipleship took place.
Okay.
So it's all part of the process there.
How do you define discipleship, John?
Well, wait, hold on with that one because
Sorry.
no, that's okay. Because I want to. What resonates in this, what you guys are saying, if somebody is just watching this and they don't know anything about community ministry, I think one of the takeaways right now is that, wow, these guys have been doing this. These guys know how to do it, but it might seem a little overwhelming. But we're going to take the overwhelming out of it because you guys are going to be teaching some classes and some how-to things to do it. But before we get into that thing, in the discipleship thing, because that's a good question, to me, I break all this down into, Jesus says for us to go.
Yes.
Well, what does go look like? And that's what I'm hearing. In the ministry context of go. It might be a little bit different in La Mirada than it is in downtown LA,
That part.
than it is in South Orange County, than it is in Oklahoma, than it is, so there's a lot of contextualization that has to go on there. But we need experienced hands that need to show people how to do this. So with that, and this is all part of discipleship,
Yes.
And so this is one of the things I'm really excited to bring this to LASBA and for it to be a part of LASBA that just continues to grow and out and reach, and hopefully we can bring some other associations into this as well. But Charlie, on May 2nd, you're going to have a sort of a little seminar here. And so what are you going to be talking about? It's going to be on Saturday, May 2nd, LASBA office, probably from about 10 to 12.
Yes.
More information will be going out about that, by the way. You'll be getting flyers and different things on that. So if you think you missed anything, you won't. We're going to make sure you have all that information.
Yeah, I'd like to do just like Community Ministry 101, Introduction to Community Ministry. What is it? And so that is to let them know some of the things we did before, but we can do today. Some of the same things to establish, number one, what are the principles and biblical examples we can use to see the church outside in the community doing ministry. Galatians chapter 6, verse 10 is this beautiful scripture. It says, if we have the opportunity, do good to all men, but especially to unbelievers. So distinctive is there that it's not just believers, but it says to all men, especially unbelievers. So I think that's where we sometimes don't go out to all men and women
Sure.
in the community.
Yeah, we get real good with brothers and sisters, but
Yes.
we forget there's other brothers and sisters
That's right.
Yes.
out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, again, the important thing, though, is we have to be able to receive them. And so that's where we have to help the church to be prepared for that. But so we'll talk about in May 2nd, the principles and biblical examples, and then ideas and models. And so I have I think I brought a sheet here. This was from LASBA when I was here, and I said, oh boy, I got this whole one. I don't know if you can see this, but this is just a sheet with
Let me put this up here. See if you-
examples and models of community ministry, and you can see many. We won't go into all those right now, but there's so many things we could do, and maybe I can read them from the back there.
Just so you get an idea, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there. Yeah, and so, but everything, just adult daycare, after-school programs, block parties, child evangelism, clothing closets, disability ministries, food distribution, foster care.
There was one
Just
that you had that was incredible. I think all of those are incredible. There was one that really stuck out, and we
Yes.
talked about how you brought up for a moment. You said different neighborhoods from La Mirada to working in South El Monte or whatever, and about contextualizing, right? Let's talk about contextualizing. Contextualizing looks like you saying that there was one about birth. Was it about pregnancy?
Pregnancy Resource Center. Yes.
That is brilliant,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Pregnancy. Can you talk about that? That's a community ministry. That's thinking outside the box.
Yes.
That's connecting with a particular audience. What does that look like?
Yeah, so this was in the current church I'm working with, that we just did a pregnancy resource center, and that is a young lady, a husband and wife came to the church, and so they were wanting to say, how can we be involved here? I said, well, what have you done before? And she says, well, I used to volunteer at a pregnancy resource center. I said, well, then do that. I mean, that's something you've done, you love, the Lord's blessed you with. So we didn't have one, but she introduced us to, in La Puente, out by our church, which is in South El Monte, and to the Pregnancy Resource Center. They have a traveling ultrasound unit that goes around and things. But since then, we've started a ministry, and we have diaper collections and things we do to donate to them. We can have volunteers volunteer and get training to help get to support and counsel people that are coming to consider abortions and things, where they can get counsel and be told about giving birth to that child. So things like that. And so the Pregnancy Resource Center is something to help women and men that are facing unwanted pregnancies and encouragement that they don't have to abort, but they can give life.
You and I discussed about how, in a sense, the bridge is two parts.
Yes.
It's in-reach and outreach. Reaching in, reaching out. Reaching out is pregnancy center,
Yes.
right? Reaching in would be Bible study, right? How does the pregnancy center, a program like the pregnancy center, how would that, in a sense, if pre-evangelism is just a simple fact, of pointing people to Jesus, how does doing something like the pregnancy center take them to the next stage of evangelism and post-evangelism?
Well, the Pregnancy Center has their own system of follow-up and workers that volunteer, and so they're going to be the ones to do it. They're going to try to plug them into a church where they get the discipleship, and then, of course, it's going to be handed off to the church. So they're a mediator between. They want to have a church network that they're working with so that they can refer these people to, and then they're going to grow in discipleship and learn how to evangelize and share the gospel through the church. So the Pregnancy Center will take them so far, and they do things like provide diapers and supplies for the first 2 years maybe of the new birth, and so they do things like that to help, but then they want to partner with churches, and they have to be the ones to then looking for churches that are going to care and love not only the parents but the new baby and have a good program for them, and then help them to grow as disciples.
So this is evangelism 101. This is relationship, evangelism, and discipleship, affectionately known as RED, right? So first, what you've done is you've created this form of relationship. This is near neighbor evangelism. This is all those different things. This is working with the people exactly where they are.
Yes.
You establish the relationship. While you've established a relationship, or we can say, how did you establish a relationship? What you did was you gave them food, gave them diapers, you did conversation, you provided the space for them after they had the child, even if they have had the child, or if they didn't, you didn't walk away from them because you disagreed if they did an abortion, right? You stayed with them regardless. Now, what that did was create that form of evangelism. Through that, they're like, man, why would somebody love me like this?
Amen.
Right?
Yes,
What is different about this?
Yes.
And I know that's kind of how it works, right?
Yes.
And so then from there, you're like, well, there's this amazing person named Jesus.
Yes, amen.
Right?
We had one young lady that was referred to us from another program we had in the community. We work with probation, so the local probation officer working with kids coming out. This was a young girl that came from juvenile hall, and she was 15 and she was having a baby, and the probation officer said, could your church in any way help this young girl?
Yeah.
So our ladies got together and threw a baby shower for her and invited her in, and she just fell in love. She had no support. Even some members of the family were encouraging her not to have the baby. And so our ladies were involved in helping them to really welcome that new baby and that mom, and then help her to get part of the church and become part of the church and grow as a disciple. Yes.
In other words, so we define discipleship as walking alongside someone, right?
Yes,
and helping them grow in the process in a sense of sanctification. We're doing it together.
Yes.
Right? Or who's that says life together? Is that Bonhoeffer, right?
Yes.
We're doing life together,
Amen.
right? Whatever season you're in, you're committed, right?
Amen.
To that life together.
Amen.
And that's what the church is doing. We've gone outside the four walls, right? Not only have we gone outside the four walls, we're pointing them in. We're not just pointing them to the four walls, right? We're pointing them to Jesus, and we're pointing them to community,
Yes.
right? Love God and neighbor. What is that? Horizontal and vertical relationship on a constant basis.
Yes.
It needs to operate in that way. So we're living and sharing the gospel, right? And so then we're moving to that point of evangelism and walking alongside with them for life. And that was all through an out-the-box program of, who would have thought, a pregnancy center, a pregnancy resource center, having the courage to, that's like having, about what is that? Where they come and check to see if they're pregnant or not. It's like having that in that particular neighborhood. That's taking the risk of having a clinic for those that need to be checked if they've got some other stuff going on, right?
Yes.
You're not saying, I don't care if you're Democratic or Republican, right? I don't care if you're Christian, and I don't care what you are. You are made in the image of God. Therefore, you are a neighbor. A neighbor is anyone who is in need. And that's the way Jesus defines it. That's the guy on the side of the road. We don't know if he's a Jew. We don't know if he's a Gentile. We don't know if he's black. We don't know if he's white. We don't know if he's brown. The text defines him as the man on the road.
Yes,
and he was in need of Jericho's road of life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Good Samaritan. Amen. Didn't look at where he was from, but looked at the need and met the need. Yes.
Yeah, so on May 2nd, did you get all 4 points there out that you're going to be doing?
So
Probably
that's-
not. I probably interrupted.
That's okay,
Well,
not at all.
Well, we're going to interrupt you in a second.
You
and it's your turn.
better.
Yeah, so we'll share the principles and biblical examples. We'll share ideas and models of community ministry. With the sheet up there, there's so many. But then we'll have a time of sharing discussions so that people coming can share what they're doing and learn from each other, and have discussions to talk about the different things we're being taught that day. And then the final thing will be to introduce an easy, applicable program that's called Community Compassionate Churches that I spoke on the last podcast.
Yeah.
And that was based on Matthew 25, 35, and 36, doing simple acts of kindness in the community,
Right.
using those 6 models of kindness in the parable there that Jesus told in Matthew chapter 25. When I was hungry, you fed me; thirsty, you gave me a drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was a stranger, you
Right.
welcomed me in. When
Love
I was
that.
sick, you came to me. When I was in jail, you visited me. And so simple acts of kindness. And we'll
Yeah.
talk about that simple program where you can just do simple little things in a 12-month period called Community Compassionate Church Program. So we'll be talking about some things like that.
Yeah, and I think we're going to do another podcast on that before May 2nd. But one of the things that we had been talking about with this isn't something that's just for pastors.
Right.
It's the pastors, you need to identify those people in your church that have a heart for these different type of ministries. On that little sheet that Charlie had there was probably 50 different things there. Your church doesn't have to do 50 different things, but it can do one. You find that one person that wants to take something on, and then you can get to 2 and 3 down the road. But don't think you have to do all of these things. You just have to take that one step, and then find your Peter, James, and John. That's what I like to say.
So
Those are going to help you do that ministry.
a question within that, and you said you find those people. So those are the things that we say. We want to find the people that are doing that. My question always is, well, how? Right? I think that's the practical piece of it. And that goes back to next steps.
Yeah.
How do you find the people in your church that are the ones, your Peter, Pauls, your Marys, your Johns, right? And that's important too, right? Not only are we going to say
Yeah, see, if you don't
where are they?
If you don't present this to them, then they don't know. But if you present it to them, and pastors, if you present it to your church, then you're going to get those people that say, yes, I've been waiting for this.
Well, you can
Or
also
I've been wanting to do
identify.
that.
You can also identify those people even before you present it. Sometimes, because many times it's the people within your congregation that are already doing the work. Right? They're already active. They're already wanting to be involved. And you just presenting this is like, yeah, I've been waiting for you, big homie. Bring it. Let's go. But a key identification marker is they already want to do the work. And then number 2, other people around them also see that they want to do the work. And then number 3 is they may feel some type of internal call to this particular work.
Yeah, and then also when we do something, if it's going to a convalescent home or if it's going to a correctional facility or something, make it simple and easy that anyone can go and just get exposure to. And
Yes, very
taste.
simple.
And a lot of times, maybe 15 people might go to that convalescent home or something, and only 2 or 3 will actually say, "Hey, I'm interested. It's okay. It doesn't
right.
matter." They were
Mhm.
exposed. They volunteer. They get an opportunity to do something kind, and the Holy Spirit's going to bless them because they went out and made themselves available to the Lord to serve.
Yeah.
And so, but in that, somebody's going to say, "Wow, this is it." I remember back in the very first church, the church on Brady, Art was a brother that we did convalescent ministry, and he became the leader of that ministry and just took it way beyond what I was doing.
Right.
Just took it to another level because he found his calling in that.
Right.
And others just went and one time and never went again. But
Never
at least
do
they
it
got
again.
exposed.
Yeah,
At least
Yeah.
They checked
got
it
to
off.
taste and see that
Yeah,
the Lord
but
is
you know,
good.
the key in that is the one that identifies the calling to do it, because, yeah, they take it to a whole different level.
Yeah.
Because God's anointed them to do this
Yes.
particular work,
Yes.
you know.
And I'd like to say, as we introduce the Community Compassion Program, which has the 6 acts of kindness and easy ways to apply little things to do just to get exposed to them in a 1-year period, my encouragement is to encourage pastors to know that pray for the person in your church that might be able to take this on,
Amen.
and
Sure.
not so you do, because you're busy, pastors.
Yes.
Amen.
You're
Yes.
busy, and you've got so many things to do.
Mhm.
But just support them, and
Support
that
them.
person that says, "Wow, I
Mhm.
enjoyed that," then
Yeah.
eventually they're going to rise up, and you're going to see your leaders come up. But we got to expose them to opportunities to serve, so they can see they have gifts to use. And
Yeah.
the Lord can bless them and
And it's
Yeah.
key
confirm in their
for
lives.
the association to also offer opportunities and
Mhm.
resources, right, to come alongside the church, because many times churches do not have the resources necessary in
Mhm.
order to get that particular thing accomplished.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Okay. We got about 10 minutes left, maybe. Dave, I want to get to yours. You're going to be doing an introduction to Marginalized Neighbouring.
Yes.
Amen.
Tell us about that.
Perfect.
What's that going to be?
So if Charlie is doing a big picture intro to community ministry, what I'll be doing is taking a microscope to the community ministry and target that to marginalized neighbors, right? So you're doing community, I'm gonna go
Okay.
I'm gonna go marginalized neighbors, and what it'll be is a 4-session training, which will be designed to equip ministry workers to biblically, practically, and compassionately serve neighbors in their communities. During that time, and I believe we're going to be doing it June 6th is the day we talked about it. We're going to be doing it June 6th, and that's where we will we'll take the time for a week, we'll go through Leviticus 19, Deuteronomy 15, and Luke. We'll do that for a session. Another session is we'll have a practical breakdown and a theory of neighboring, a theory of who our neighbors are, what they're about, different ideas that have happened throughout the years. And then our final sessions, what we're going to do for those, those are 2 weeks long. That is where you will get the opportunity to get connected with lived experiences and local context of peeps or practitioners or participants that work within Los Angeles County or within our area. So in other words, you'll meet people that work with seniors. You'll meet people, hear testimonies with people that work with the homeless, those that work with veterans, those that worked with migrants and immigrants, right? And the church, those who are a part of the body, will be connected to those particular groups and people that work, and they'll be able to hear the story. So that way, when they're watching the news, working with immigrants, or it's not something that's at a distance. It's something like, oh, I know somebody, who works with immigrants, and there might be a program that's there to help connect them to citizenship, right? Instead of like, oh, this immigrant is coming to our church. What do? Let's call somebody. It's no, let's us commit to walking alongside them and connect them to resources that might help them continue to contribute to society, as well as, that's the way, like you said, hands and feet of Jesus.
In
And
that,
so-
you bring up a term that I really like. You talk about neighbor and neighboring. Define, what is a neighbor?
A neighbor is anyone in need of care. A neighbor is anyone who is in need of care. Well, if that be the case, if a neighbor is anyone in need of care, neighboring would be the practice of placing the care of those in need into the shared responsibility of the church and the neighborhood. In other words, it calls for a full community engagement and invites the neighborhood to take collective responsibility for those who are the outside, the outcast, that's marginalized, who are among us. And I believe firmly that it is our calling, commitment, conviction, whatever great word you want to use, as the church, and what Christ calls us to do is to care and to love our neighbors no matter who they are. And we are to fully participate in this and doing that. And in that sense, we do that by living and sharing the gospel. So neighboring is literally full engagement. It's practicing caring. It's a shared responsibility. It's not one person's job. It's all of our job to be good neighbors. And it's like-minded people that are like, all right, we'll live the Great Commission. We'll not only preach it and teach it, we'll live it. And that's so you remember it,
Gosh, it sounds like the book of Acts, David.
Oh, it's almost like the book of Acts.
Almost, huh? This is interesting because I remember when I talked to you and you used that term neighboring, it just jumped all over me. It was just like, yes, this is what it is. This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
We're not just supposed to love our neighbor. We're supposed to embrace our neighbor. We're supposed to meet our neighbor. We're supposed to find out the needs. We're supposed to bring them in, and have all things in common. You mentioned the thing about immigration and stuff. With all the noise, with everything that's going on with ICE and immigration and stuff, the one thing you don't hear is that, I was with a young man that was illegal status during all of this crazy stuff where the only thing you hear is they're going to take you, they're going to deport you, or you have to leave. Well, we found a pathway for that individual
That's right.
to stay here and to get all the documentation he needed to stay here and get the green card
That's right.
during this turbulent time.
That's right.
The only way you do that is through neighboring,
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
you know?
And it doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah,
There's literally, Jesus is saying there's no proximity.
you know,
There's no boundaries.
right,
It's limitless
right,
who your neighbor is.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and see, this is to kind of wrap up here. I want you guys to come back. I'm probably going to do individual with you and maybe come back again and do some stuff because this, I'm so excited. I normally don't get excited, but this is really exciting to me, but not just to hear about this, but, we're this close to implementing it and being it and doing it. And I think this is what's been lacking in the church for so long because seminary does not teach you how to be a pastor. It teaches you how to handle the Bible, exegesis, all that other good stuff like that. What teaches you how to be a pastor is going out among the sheep
That's right.
and finding the needs.
In the, I forget the translation. Man, it's the translation I'm not a fan of. That's probably why I forget it. But it's the one that's written by the guy. He says, Jesus was born and he moved into the neighborhood.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
That's a vibe, right?
right,
Good.
right.
That's real, right? He was born and he moved into the
Is
neighborhood.
that a translation?
I love
of
that.
John 1:1?
I love that.
What's that freer version? It's not NLT,
Yeah.
but the message.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's
I
the way the
like
mess is
that. I like
translated.
that. I
He
like
was
Yeah.
born, moved into the neighborhood.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of wrap this up now. And so I want to encourage you, those that are watching, remember this is gonna be on May 2nd, 2026. You're gonna be hearing more about it. You can call LASBA office. We're gonna be sending out flyers and different things on it. And in our quarterly meeting, we're gonna be talking about it. And so we're gonna set all this up, so we're gonna get you all the information that you know. Your job is to be there as a pastor, identify some people to bring with you that might want to hear about these kind of things so that you can hand it off and walk alongside them. When I was a pastor in La Mirada, I planted a church in La Mirada. The church grew because we were in the neighborhood,
That's right.
because we were doing things.
That's right.
And we were meeting the needs. We were finding out, you know, everybody, right away people knew who we were because we were in the park. We were at the events. We were giving this, we were doing that, all these different things. And it was, you know, you have to come outside the four walls of the church to actually become the church and do effective ministry. Right now we hear all the numbers, you know, churches aren't growing and this is going down and stuff. It maybe, just maybe, it's because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And that's just go out and be the church and meet the needs of people and preach the gospel out there, which is secondary. Well, not secondary, it's primary. But, you know, to engage people in that conversation.
So what you're saying is, our calling as the church is our calling as practitioners of community engagement, etc. The gospel, evangelism, all those things, is to serve the church and engage our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. And so that's why I'm excited about this and you two guys doing it, because you guys are the expert. I'm just kind of the facilitator.
He's an
guy here.
expert.
I'm
It's an
just-
understatement.
And so I'm excited about this. So in about 30 seconds or so, any last thoughts, Pastor Charlie?
Well, I'm excited to see the direction you're going there to help pastors to be equipped,
Yeah.
to be able to help their congregations get out and be loving neighbors.
That's right.
To their neighbors, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Amen. God bless you and the association.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Pastor Dave?
Hope to see you June 6th.
Yeah, okay, June 6th, that's another one. We're gonna be doing it in June 6th, so you're also gonna be getting flyers, stuff about that. We're gonna be doing more podcasts on this. So again, hit like and subscribe, because when you subscribe, then you get the content. And so the content's gonna be on YouTube. It will also be on our LASBA webpage. So God bless, see you all soon. Take care, and don't forget to share the gospel with every chance you get. Amen?
Amen.
God bless you guys, thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.